Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for High Velocity Radio.
Welcome back to High Velocity Radio. I'm your host, professional EOS implementer, Joshua Kornitsky, and my guest here today is Rich Maynard. He's a sales coach and a professional implementer of the EOS system based out of Greenville, South Carolina. Good afternoon, Rich. How are you?
I'm good, Joshua. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you. So happy to have you here today. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? Where are you from?
Well, I grew up in the Detroit area and left there a while ago. Joined the Navy, and they
Thank
say
you for your
join the Navy
service.
and see the world. They are not lying. But what the recruiters don't often talk about is the world is 73% water. So
you picked the right way to go.
Yeah. You pick they say the old slow boat to China. I was actually on that boat.
There you go.
It is quite a voyage.
Thank you again for your service.
So, but I settled in the Greenville area about 30 years ago, and have found a local girl, and now I have Southern children. So
wow. So
been married 28 years.
That's fantastic. So tell us about your professional background. What brought you to where you are today? What drives you?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I was in the Navy when I was younger, and I don't know how many of your viewers have ever been in the military, or been around aircraft carriers, but a lot of people have seen Top Gun in the movies, and what most people don't realize is of the 5,000 or so people that are on one of those ships, that every time it deploys, fully half of that crew has never done that before.
Wow.
And they're all about 19 years old.
Wow.
So that structure, process, discipline, accountability really stuck with me as I left the military and went into my civilian career, where I moved through some roles in manufacturing. Actually, I was in the photographic world working for Fujifilm.
Okay.
And if you happen to have any pictures hanging on your wall or on your desk that have Fuji on the back of the paper, that's what we manufactured here in South Carolina. And at our peak in 2003, before the digital revolution, we were manufacturing 1 million square meters of photographic paper a day.
Wow.
In complete darkness, because it's photographic. So
right.
We ran
so
our
it
factory
has to
with
be.
the lights off.
Right.
And again, that theme of structure, process, discipline, accountability. When you're running around a factory with a bunch of moving parts and heavy equipment, and there's no lights on, you got to be pretty good about that stuff.
So
ultimately, I moved through several roles there, and some, like a lot of salespeople, one day woke up and found myself in a sales role.
Okay.
And moving through, and really enjoyed sales and getting to know customers and building those relationships, and that led me to a coaching a position with a sales coaching organization, which I love. That's where I developed a real passion for the entrepreneurial world and small and medium-sized businesses. You look at the economy around the world, and big business is great, but the small businesses really are the beating heart of our economy, and I just love helping them.
No question.
Yeah. But so as I was working with those guys, I realized that about 40% of those clients of mine, I did more than 1,000 coaching sessions with them, and
Wow.
and about 40% of my clients were just different. They struggled with the same things everybody else was, but they got better quicker. They were more successful, and they enjoyed the process and each other more than the others did. And I thought, what is going on with these people? And then they were all using similar terms. They were using things like L10s and rocks and scorecards and VTO. And so I started to uncover what this language was and discovered it was EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So my favorite clients were implementing EOS in their business as they were getting this training that we were going through. And that just led me down the path of really understanding what EOS is. And it just brought together that passion for small business and small and medium-sized business, and the structure, process, accountability, and discipline that I saw in my military and my manufacturing career. And I kind of felt like I found my home.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like you may not have gotten where you were going, but you ended up where you needed to be. It's my favorite quote from Douglas Adams. But let me ask you, because obviously you and I speak a common language. One of the things that I think is important, though, is to help people understand, who is EOS for? How does it help? And again, EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System, but explain it so that people will understand what it is you do.
So EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's a simple set of practical tools that helps instill three things in a business. It's vision, traction, and healthy. And vision is just about getting everybody on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there. Traction is about instilling that discipline and accountability. So everywhere you look in the business, everybody's actually executing on your vision. And healthy is working with leadership teams to help them be more open and honest with each other, solve real problems to make their lives better. Because a lot of times they're just not that way. And then what we find is, as goes the leadership teams, so goes the rest of the organization. And ultimately, through the EOS journey, everybody in the organization gets on the same page. They're all rowing up, in the same direction, pulling on the same end of the rope, and life gets better. The business is more successful, and everybody begins to enjoy their lives and live the life they want instead of their business running their life.
Thank you. That gives it some context for folks that are hearing it and helps them better understand. So in your experience, what are some of the biggest impacts you've seen on the leaders that you work with as you've helped them instill the EOS model into their business?
Yeah, there's a couple of really striking examples that I have that highlight where EOS has had an immediate impact. One of the things we do, we call it vision building. So we answer some questions to help people define where they're going and how they're going to get there. And one of the big things that we get out of that is what are the most important things that you need to be working on in the immediate future? We call these rocks. So what are the big things that you need to be working on in the next 60 to 90 days? And one owner, we went through this initial vision building step, and he had a pet project he was working on that had taken a lot of resources and money from the company as he was building this. It was a great innovation for their business. But as we laid out all their priorities and all the issues they had to overcome in the immediate future, we went through this prioritization, and he realized, hey, this thing that I've been pouring a bunch of resources into is not the most important thing for our business in the next 90 days. There's 4 or 5 other things that we really need to shore up. So when we do get this thing off the ground, it launches well. So he put that on the shelf for the immediate future, set these rocks, set these priorities, and solidified the most important things to get done. And then at the end of that quarter, when those things got done, he brought it back out, and it became now it's the most important thing that he needs to do. The funny, or I guess the eye-opening part was his team at the end of that first day looked at him and said, "I can't believe you were the one who put that on the shelf. We've been wanting to do that, but we know it's your project." And we were kind of like, "Okay, this is yours." But they all agreed that it was the right thing to do, and it really freed them to take advantage of that innovation at the right time.
So you're helping the leaders learn how to prioritize?
Well, the first thing is we help them get everything out on the table.
Okay.
So you can't prioritize if the issues are not out there in front of you. And then we help them prioritize. And it's really, we are more facilitators. One of the things that a core belief within the EOS community is 95% of the answers are already in the room. Our job is to facilitate those conversations, teach the tools that we use, and coach them in their use. We're not going to come in and tell you how to run your business, because we don't know how to run your business. But what we do know is how to implement these tools and how to facilitate the conversations to make sure that the right things are being brought out in the right time.
Okay. That makes sense, right? So what happens, say, when you encounter an organization that's cross-generational? I know something like 70% of the small businesses in America are family businesses. So I'm sure from time to time you come in and it's an organization where, the older generation might be on their way out or is already out, and the new generation comes in. How do you work to transform an established organization, and what are some of the challenges that you encounter?
Well, that's a great question. And one of the I have a client that I've been working with that exactly like you said, the founders of the company and his partner, they have stepped back. They're more in a board kind of advisory role, and the son has taken over as president of the company. And it's a great company. It's been successful. They're stuck, which is why they're using EOS. They're trying to break through a revenue and a organizational ceiling that they've hit. And one of the areas they've been very successful is historically they are a very solid. Their core values are very solid. And what core values are is just a simple set of terms that define who they are at their core. They're resourceful, they're respectful, they're responsible.
So,
That defines the kinds of people that they want to be around.
so did they already have those, or is that something you
They
worked with
did.
them? Okay.
Yeah, so they had their core values and they all believed in them. And so we even in that case, we still go through an exercise that at the very least is going to validate that what they have is actually true within their organization. Because a lot of times the owners or the founders, they sit in a room and they're like, here's who we are, or here's who we want to be.
Sure.
And
Sure.
then they hang them on a wall and they never talk about it.
Mousepad core values.
Yeah. So these guys actually lived their core values. In this exercise we went through validated exactly that they do truly live the core values that they had set out to build over 17 years. But it also illuminated that they identified another core value that is part of their DNA that makes them successful, that wasn't listed. So not only did we validate the three they had, we added one. But what was interesting was, so I asked the question, well, we went through this exercise, what's different? And one of the leaders on the team, she said, these have always been the owner's core values, and we've always lived them and appreciated those core values, but they were always theirs. But now that we've gone through this exercise, I feel like they're mine.
That's awesome. And updated
and
for the
rest of
current
team said
generation.
exactly. It's like, yes, these now we own them. And it really, you could just see them settle back in their chairs and just take in the fact that this is theirs now. It's no longer the previous owners. They own it now. It was incredibly powerful.
That's amazing. And it does kind of cross that bridge, right? Or it bridges the gap between the outgoing and the incoming. And for a company of any size to stay successful, you've got to both have continuity and preservation of what was, but stay tuned in to what's happening now, because, I occasionally encounter people that are in industries like, say, film paper photo paper production, and it's not that it doesn't exist anymore, but it certainly doesn't exist at the scale that it was at. Ironically, what was mass produced now becomes a niche item, but that's just reality. You've got to help people understand that they got to stay up to date, because if they just stay fixed in the past, things will go by them. So what does it look like when you engage with someone from an EOS perspective? What's that process that you work through? Do you just sign them to a contract and get in there and tear the place up? How does it work?
No, so that's what's a little unique about the way EOS implementers engage with clients. We don't have any contracts. One of the things we say is our services are guaranteed. So like, well, what does that mean? So we work on a kind of a daily session. We scheduled sessions, and if you get value at the end of that session, then we get paid. And if you don't get value, then don't pay us. We don't deserve it. Our goal is to help you and recognize the what is going on in your organization and where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and then help set you up with the tools that we have to be successful in the future. And if you don't get that from us, then we didn't do our job.
Okay.
So that's that. And then as far as the process we go through, you've got earlier the 90-second version of what EOS is.
Right.
There's also a 90-minute version where there's no charge. We get in front of the leadership team and we invest our time with the leadership team to just lay out the whole process and all of the tools. We just want everybody in that meeting. It's really, is EOS the right fit for your organization? Am I, as the implementer, the right fit for you? Sometimes implementers or a leadership team might not feel the implementer, so we always want them to use EOS, and we'll make introductions to others if it's not a good fit.
So is that 90-minute meeting like deep intensive or more like a 10,000-foot overview?
It's pretty intensive. We go through all of the tools that we have at a high level, and then we take a deeper dive into each one to illustrate how it can affect the issues that are going on in that business. And we do spend time on the front end understanding what's going on. So when we do run across, well, here's a particular tool that may address the challenge that you're facing in your business. So it's tailored to the individual organization, but we want to make sure they get a full picture of what the EOS model is.
So you're laying out a roadmap for them.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So
the last part of that is what does the process look like? And there's as we open that up and unpack that, it really starts off with 3 days, about 30 days apart, where we go in and we first help them gain traction. So we want to get them moving. We want to get them making decisions. We want to get them solving problems, setting priorities. So they're actually moving in a direction. Because a lot of times what happens is people have this vision, but they don't have any traction. And vision without traction is just hallucination. So we
True.
want to get them moving in a direction. And then the second day, we start to crystallize that vision. That's where we start looking and answering what are our core values? What's our core focus? What's our 10-year target? And then we build on that in the third day with who are we going to reach? Who are we going to talk to? What are we going to say to them? And then, what's a 3-year picture and a 1-year plan? And what is the most important thing we need to get done in the next 90 days to tie all these things together? So that's the 3-day journey that we go on over about a 60-day period.
right.
And then
what?
from there, they're into execution mode, and we meet with them once a quarter to look back at the past quarter, learn from it, look at the current situation and set the next priorities for the next quarter, and then really spend about half a day really just, we call it identify, solve, or discuss and solve issues.
Okay.
Working through the things that are tripping them up.
And you help them understand that process.
Yep. Well, we facilitate that process.
Okay.
Which in the same sense as we facilitate, we're equipping them to do that when we're not there.
That makes sense. So one question going back when we were talking about sort of that generational shift, and that's not always family, right? That could just be leaders leaving and new leaders coming in, and companies sort of find themselves in states of flux. I think these days probably more often than maybe in the past, because with no critique of any particular group of age or what have you, it's become a more transient workforce where people will move in and move out. So how do you make sure you've got the right people in the right seats in the organization with that type of upheaval?
So that's a great, the right people, right seats is a cornerstone of, and you may recognize that from the book Good to Great by Jen Collins, which is a fabulous book. But it really tells the story of you have to get the right people in the right seats, because if you don't, you'll never achieve a vision that you have. So how do we use the tool we call, well, there's a couple of tools. The first one, we call it a people analyzer. And when we look at, we take those core values, and that's the right people side of things. Do they actually meet and live up to our core values? And what's really interesting is everybody defines their core values differently.
Sure.
So a core value fit for organization A is not necessarily a core value fit for organization B. So we look at the unique organization and say, well, what makes this person right for you? That's the first step. The second step we look at is we have a tool called the accountability chart. Now, a lot of organizations have organizational charts.
Right.
The difference is, in our accountability chart, we highlight not only the seat, we take a structure first approach. We highlight, well, what seats do we need in this organization? But we also identify the 5 core responsibilities or things that seat is accountable for. And then when we finally put a name in that seat, one, do they match our core values? Do they exhibit our core values? Do they live up to who we are? Are they the people we want to be around and then we want our customers to encounter? And secondly, do they get their job? Do they get those 5 roles? Do they want it? Do they, so that they have the genetic encoding that this is what they want to do. This is like, I wake up in the morning and I get to go do my job. Not have to go do my job.
Makes sense though, but it makes a
the
difference.
capacity. So,
Okay. So no, it makes sense because if they're aligned to the core values and they understand what's being asked of them, they've got a lot more clarity than probably a lot of places offer as employment, right?
Well, and it's more than just being aligned. It's, do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity for it? And that capacity is measured in a bunch of different ways. It's time. It's, do they have the training? Do they have the innate abilities? So that's and that's how we start evaluating people. And if it's a core value fit and they're missing one or two things, well, then we put a plan in place to help them overcome it. And if they don't, well, we try to find another seat for them, because finding the right people is hard.
So what happens if you've got a seat that you don't have the right person for?
If it's a wrong person,
No, you don't. I mean, wrong person too, but I mean, you just don't, you go through this exercise to understand the roles, you understand the accountabilities of the roles, but what if you don't have someone currently employed that fits that? Who takes that seat?
Well, somebody has to take that seat. Somebody has to be accountable for those roles. And that's the difference between an organizational chart and an accountability chart. So that stuff still has to get done. So somebody has to do it. And in one case, I was working as another second generation client. The son had come in and taken over, and he was the president. He was also the sales manager, and he was the finance guy. So he was handling
all the
money.
hats.
He was handling the sales team. He's trying to be we call it the visionary, the big thinker. And he had his head down in the business, trying to do the small thinking too. And they were stuck. And as soon as we laid out this accountability chart and started saying, well, who's actually in these seats today? And it was like, oh, well, there's the rest of the team looked at him and said, well, do you see the problem here?
So he was his own roadblock.
He was the roadblock, and he's like, 100% see this. So he had two members of his team step up in the roles that they were not currently in. And they all agreed, you're going to take this responsibility and you're going to take this responsibility. And it took two seats off of his shoulders, which freed him up to, one, be effective in the seats he was in. And also it took 2 days a week out of his schedule of things that he had to do, because somebody else was now doing that. So now he was able to become that big thinker, and he kept the finance role. So he was able to dive into the finances of the business and really understand them. Huge change for him personally and for the business. They're just on a path that they've never seen before.
So EOS basically gave him some freedom.
That was the biggest thing for him. His biggest impact was, I actually have time to breathe, and I'm not everybody in the business isn't waiting for me to do something so they can act. And so that we call it letting go of the vine. The sales role, he had somebody come in, and it's one of his team members.
Right.
Now, when we start looking at what are the issues of the business, well, one of the issues is, do we fill that sales and marketing seat with somebody from outside the business? So that's an issue, but it's not one of the most important issues to solve in the next 90 days. So it goes on a list. It stays there until it's either not an issue anymore, or they solve, or they decide it's the most important thing, and they put it on the list to be solved. But right now, they're doing okay. 90 days from now, that may become a thing, and that may be one of the most 3 to 7 important things that they need to accomplish, and then it'll go on that list.
It sounds like it's a pretty transformative process.
The biggest thing that I've seen happen, one, everybody knows what their job is and what everybody else's job is. So they get to understand that. They know who is responsible for what, they know who's accountable for what, and they also know where they're going. So in this process, we answer those questions: core values, core focus, our 10-year target. Where are we going? And then where do we need to be just 3 years from now in order to answer that, or to begin on that path? And then what do we need to be in a year? And now everybody's pulling on the same end of the rope, growing the same direction. The entire leadership team is on board with it. It just becomes very transparent. Everybody's solving problems for real.
That's fantastic. So who's EOS for? If someone's listening to this and they're thinking, This sounds great, but I don't know if it's for me. Who's it intended for?
It's intended for privately held businesses that are anywhere from 10 to 250 people. One of the things that, when you gather kind of a litmus test, if you gather your leadership team together and you can set the direction and make changes to the website, that's probably who should look at EOS.
Okay.
And the people that are stuck. It's, we've reached that, we've made it to 10 employees or $5 million in revenue or $2 million, but we keep bumping against the ceiling. We don't know how to get past it. That's a $5 million ceiling. That's a $20 million ceiling. That's a $50 million ceiling. Businesses, we call it hitting the ceiling. Every once in a while, they just reach the capacity of how the business is designed. So how do you change that? You got to change the methodology that you're using. Otherwise, you'll never break through that capacity. And that's what EOS helps people do.
Well, I mean, it sounds fantastic. So when we publish, we'll obviously have all your information. But Rich, how do people get in touch with you?
The EOS worldwide website has an implementer directory, which if you look up Rich Maynard or South Carolina, I'm in there. But Rich Maynard at Richard.Maynard at EOSworldwide.com.
And again, we'll put that on our site as well when we push out to all the platforms, so people will be able to access this. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate it. Last question, Rich. How big of an area do you service?
So right now, nationwide, one client in Texas, one client in California. I've got a client in the upstate, and a handful of others that are in the area.
So you go where you need to go.
Go where the need is, and it's really satisfying work when you see people. I mentioned that sitting back and realizing, wow, this value, these values, this vision, this company is ours now. It's not the previous owners, even though they love them and they're still part of it. But I just love that those aha moments, that when people become free of the past and they can actually see and recognize that the future is possible.
That's a great place to end it. Thank you, Rich. Again, my guest today has been Rich Maynard, sales coach and professional EOS implementer. I appreciate your time, Rich. Thank you for coming on. My name is Joshua Kornitsky. I am the host of High Velocity Radio. I too am a professional EOS implementer, but I always enjoy talking to my associates like Rich. Thank you, Rich, and appreciate having you on, and we'll have you on again in the future.
All right, Joshua, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.